which are the judges that they think they could try this with, and just to get a toehold in, so it feels like, okay, this judge did it, then maybe there's a little less resistance from their colleagues. So there's some Silicon Valley term like first initiator or something like that, right? Like getting one person to do it. And then with the prosecutor, what we've done, actually more in videos, but I think the same logistics work with the packets, is line prosecutors saying no, right? Or whatever they're saying. That the community force could make it a larger political issue. And so the larger community might be telling the elected DA, this case is important to all of us. And we know that there's something we want this to be reviewed. So, because there are ways that the community can move that a lawyer can't. And so being able to coordinate that allows some stuff to get entered in a way that maybe otherwise wouldn't. So those are kind of the two ways we've seen it. Okay. Was there another question that okay. We're gonna keep moving. So we were just gonna describe, like, we talked about the meetings, and just wanted, so you have a better handle on like what actually happens, and hopefully this will be happening at TOP soon. I don't know. So what the meetings are pretty straightforward. So families come to the meetings, and then they're sitting in a circle, and there's a facilitator. The facilitator usually gives kind of an introduction, because again, it's maybe a different experience for the family or community. They're not sure what it's going to be, and so it's usually someone that's been through the process themselves that's facilitating. That's important to our model, so people see that it's kind of shared power. It's not just a couple like magic people at the organization that are going to solve the problems, that sort of thing. And that's important to see people facilitating that have been through the process themselves. And then they'll give kind of like a little introductory welcome, and they'll say, thanks for coming to this meeting, and we're here to support you in supporting your loved one. And we're going to ask you to say the name of your loved one. We're going to put it on the board, and then we're going to go through each name and see where the case is and what we could do collectively to try to impact that case. There'll be some, it's the term, admonishments. I don't know what the word, but we'll say, look, no one here's a lawyer. If no one here's a lawyer, if someone's a lawyer, we'll say so-and-so's a lawyer. And we'll say, because this isn't a legal clinic, which is the first thing people assume it is. Like, where do I just sign my name up and take a number and then see a lawyer? We say, look, this isn't a legal clinic. This is about you being an agent of change. And we'll say, look, also too, because, we're not lawyers, this isn't like it got romantic for a second. And that this isn't a confidential space. So when we don't want to talk about the details of the incident with this big group, and the facilitators all kind of trained on how to make sure they're not weaving into that lane. And then if there's some people kind of in the back too that are like, okay, we'll see. I thought I was going to get a discount on a lawyer here or something like that, or because a lot of people come because their loved one called them from jail and said, why don't you go on Thursday to such and such? So they don't even know what they're stepping into. And we say, look, if you do nothing, and this was saying that we made more into a sort of national empirical study, but we say, look, if you do nothing, the system is going to give your loved one time served. And that's the language the system uses to quantify time of incarceration. But if you engage, if you come to these meetings, if you work with your public defender, you could turn time served into time saved. And that's them home with you. So kind of like those bubbles that we showed earlier. Sabir would have been X number of years old when he came home. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Just kind of like a logistical question. We obviously have the meeting, and obviously the public defender is not at the meeting. How do you kind of facilitate the communication between the family members and the public defender?
Right. When do you want to take that?
Well, actually, in Knoxville, they send someone from the public defender's office, and sometimes she'll just say, do I need to come? And she's, I think she's I don't know what she actually does at the office, but she comes, and if we need something from the public defender's office, we're like, hey, can you ask them, can we do this or do that? But normally it's the family, you're just preparing them for the meeting with the public defender, or preparing them with questions, or helping them possibly email the public defenders if they're not getting a response.
And then, that's sort of it. It's really the family that's doing the heavy lifting, and so we're essentially saying you should reach. Just the whole notion of you should contact your public defender is something that people don't assume is what you're supposed to be able to do. And then also, if there's a way, what we'll say is, okay, get everything kind of together so that way, when you do reach out to the public defender, it feels kind of purposeful and kind of laser beamed your questions so it doesn't seem all over the place. And then the meetings are also like kind of where a lot of the emotional work or kind of spaces for, so that way it's not just unloaded on the public defender, but there's like other people that are going through the same issues they're going through. They could talk that through.
Say something and then ask a question. So it seems like the questions I get from folks in trying to envision this is they see, I think people think of it more as like the public defender comes over and they, tell people, they give a lecture on what the law is. And it seems to me like there's this fine balance that you have to have between stepping in and taking away the situation where these folks are empowering themselves by being part of the process and not just being talked down by some other authority figure like the public defender, but there is also this communication back and forth, and you have to kind of have that balance. Is that right? And then also sometimes there's some tensions because sides aren't always communicating, and it's like democracy. It's messy. Yeah.
Well stated. Healthy tension, yeah. And so it varies. So like in San Jose, public defenders aren't there, not because we have like a no lawyers allowed poster on the wall. It's just, I think, the time of our meetings and just the way we kind of came up. And so, but we have, meaning Debug has a relationship with all the public defenders. And so, like if a defender knows a family, or their client's family is coming to Debug, that tells them something. It tells them that, okay, they're going to get some basic navigation on the system. I know to probably expect a social bio packet. I'll see more people at court. If there's some issues, there'll be a point person, so it's not like 10 cousins, all shooting emails out. They'll say, okay, in the participatory defense model, there's one family member. So they kind of know that there's some sense of organization around it. In some places, like in Philadelphia, we have 5 participatory defense hubs. And that's partly because of the geographic need. Certain people aren't going to go to certain parts of Philly. And so there's 5 different hubs. And the defender office there is sort of like made participatory defense one of their central kind of tenets. And so they actually have like an in-house kind of community liaison, like an outreach worker that sort of is in regular communication with each of the hubs. But then lawyers actually go to their meetings. Not all their meetings, but they go to their meetings, and then they're sort of just very mindful of their space, so they're not all the attention goes to them. But then they also are there to answer some questions if the hub feels that there's some things that they can't figure out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you have a view as to whether it's more helpful or less helpful to have a lawyer there, like you kind of do?
Yeah, I think it's we never had a lawyer at ours initially, and we felt fine. But then in other places like in Montco, like we never had to deal with that because lawyers didn't want to like come. But like in other places, they're like, yeah, we want to be there. And as long as the lawyers that go are mindful of their space and understand this is about the community, then it seems to work out fine, right?
Yeah, for us, they come when they're, because our meetings are Mondays 6 to 8, and then we have 2 hubs in Montgomery County, and then like 30 minutes away is another hub, so that Thursdays from 6 to 8, so they can't always make it. But they'll come, even our chief public defender, he'll come. But they don't, we introduce them, but most of the time they don't say anything. If they have we don't even like to for them to give legal advice, but if they just have a question on making sure that we're steering them in the right direction, then that's how we do.
Yeah, and there's like a kind of middle space that I've seen happen too, where, maybe you're like maybe it's like in Knoxville, like they might come when they're available, and it's just keeping some connectivity. I think is really important for those moments when there is healthy tension. But the another thing that I've seen happen in some spaces is a public defender isn't necessarily going all the time, but then there'll be regular communication with the defender office and the hub, and to say like, here's what's going on, or hey, it could be even issues that they iron out. This one line attorney isn't getting back to such and such, or vice versa. Heard your hub was something happened, but then the other thing is there's going to be issues that the hub sees that weren't apparent before in like prosecutorial inclinations, like things like that. And so stuff that is going to be very familiar to the public defender. And so we've had situations where the public defender, like once a month, there are these conversations, the defender would then just come over separate from the meeting, but for everyone at the hub and their families to give a training on something. Like, here's how, like we literally had, speaking of gang enhancements, we had like one of the most recent ones was a supervisor at the alternative defender's office said, hey, can I come by to show you what prosecutors are showing in gang jury trials? And so he had a copy of the PowerPoint. And so he showed it to us, one, so we knew what was being presented, but two, to get ideas from us on like how to respond. So that's kind of like another option.
Are these meetings that you're talking about that are regularly scheduled, are they community meetings, or are they specified to the case? General open community meetings?
Never know who's coming, unless your family has been there before.
Yeah. And so what we do, what we say too, it's also very, like what a hub looks like and feels like is very much based on who that local host organization is. It reflects whatever their culture and rhythm is. So like at Debug, for example, we have people that walk in all the time for all kinds of random reasons. And so you'll see here, like we have a facilitator and a note taker, but in the back of the room, like the doors here, we have what we call floaters. And those are just those are folks at Debug. When people come in, they sort of like make sure they're at the right meeting, and that there's, they give a little bit of background so that way the facilitator knows who the person is and that kind of thing. So speaking of roles, so the facilitator does their thing. We actually rotate the facilitator. So the meetings are like 2 hours long, roughly. I mean, there's no hard stop, but we go through the names, and it varies. I think we were asked yesterday how many names on a board. In a weekly meeting, what's an average?
3 to 4.
Okay.
So currently, I think we're at like 10.
Okay. And we have 2 meetings a week, and the smaller meetings like 8 to 10, and the bigger meetings like 15 to 20 names on the board. And so yeah, we'll go through those names, and then we'll ask these kind of 2 framing questions. One is an update, and the other one's a to-do. And so the update, the facilitator might say, okay, well, who's here for Jimmy? And so, oh, that's my cousin. And so, okay, well, what is it where are we right now? And they'll say, I don't know. Probation came 2 days ago, and they took them, and they said something about a fight over on Polk Street. That's generally, people tend not to know much more than that. And so there's these questions that we've sort of come up with over the years that we figure we need to know to even know how you could get a toehold to do something. And so there'll be questions like, oh, do you know the exact charges? Do you know who the attorney is? Do you know this next sentencing or the next court date, the purpose of the next court date? And if people don't know that information, part of the to-dos is trying to find that information. Okay, well, can you set up a meeting with the attorney to find out XYZ? That's what worked for my brother. Or okay, you say you have court next Wednesday. Who else can go to court with Miss Johnson? And people say, I'll go, that sort of thing. And so what ends up happening is it populates this to-do list. And so it might be start social bio packet, email attorney, go to court on Thursday, and it's these specific kind of activities intentionally made to be sort of achievable within a week. And we started doing that because just the sheer endurance required to survive the court process, much less incarceration, breaks people. You know, like families split up, and I mean, these are all stories you know, right? Like even before you get to whatever the actual conviction, potential conviction is, like the stress of it breaks people. And so what we want is manageable things people can do. And then so they do those. So they imagine like walking in a room not knowing anything, just knowing that this is probably the most difficult time of your family's history. Not knowing any ways to involve yourself, not having any sense of direction. You're meeting other people that support you rather than judge you, and that maybe have been through or are in the same exact position you were on, so you don't feel so alone. That's the emotional side. But then you also walk out with a specific set of steps, like, okay, here are things I could do. And then that family comes back next week, and when we say update, they'll say, okay, so I emailed the attorney. She's really cool. She said she'd meet with me and Uncle on Thursday, and I went to court. It got continued, but I know what's going to happen at the next court date. And I started my social bio packet. I'm going to meet Imani and Adrian on Wednesday. We're going to scan photos to start it. So then they keep coming. What we say is keep coming every week until your loved one's home. And that's not to give a false impression that everyone's case is going to evaporate as soon as they start coming to meetings. But it's saying that families, oftentimes, regardless if someone gets locked up for life or faces the death penalty, it's not like that person doesn't exist anymore. There's still going to be things that they could do. And they still want a community that will support them, like as the world continues to turn, that they could say, my loved one still exists and is still important. And when that person comes home, when we get an acquittal or we get a charge dropped or a sentence reduced, you know, from in custody time to out of custody, or just reduced from, you know, say like 8 years to 1 year, right? Like you all are kind of the only